Welcome to St. John the Baptist Roman Catholic Cathedral, built 1898 to 1900. It's built in French Gothic architectural style. On this site was a church built in 1873. And in 1898, the boiler blew up and it burned down. This church was built to replace it, and it is a cathedral. Any Catholics in the group? 3 out of 15, still a bigger percentage in the state of Georgia, and I'm going to tell you all about that, okay? This is a cathedral. You see this tall chair right here? The tall one? That is called a cathedra, hence the word cathedral. If you look the word cathedra up in a dictionary, it would tell you it's a word of Greek origin that means bishop's chair, chair of authority. When the bishop is here to say Mass, he will sit in that cathedra. Now, the bishop manages the Diocese of Savannah from this cathedral. The Diocese of Savannah consists of 90 counties in the south of Georgia. Georgia is the largest state geographically east of the Mississippi River. This diocese is bigger than 6 states east of the Mississippi River. It is huge. However, the state of Georgia has almost 11 million people. A little less than 9% are Roman Catholic. So that's about 900,000 Catholics in the entire state. And guess what? 810,000 of those buggers are up in Atlanta. We only got about 90,000 in this huge geography. We have 56 churches. Half of those churches are in 4 cities. We have 28 small country churches serving our agrarian society. Southern Georgia is all farmland, cotton, peanuts, peaches, pecans, things like that. Many of those 28 churches are the size of a large garage. They may have 3 or 4 families in them, yet they're servicing 3 counties. So our bishop is constantly traveling, building that laity, and hopefully expanding the size of those buildings. Now, this church is not a museum. This is a working church. We have about 1,000 families worship here regularly. We have 4 Masses on Sunday. We have 2 on Saturday, 1 every morning at 7:30, 1 every day at noon. So there's a pretty good chance when you come in, you might catch us praying. And that's a good thing, not a bad thing. Now, Catholics were not allowed in Georgia until 1780. And the reason for that was twofold: religious and political. If you remember your American history, Oglethorpe set this place up as an English colony. At the same time, in our country's very beautiful history, Spain, France, and England were vying for territory. Spanish had settled in Florida, French in Alabama. Oglethorpe looked at them and said, they are papists. They believe in the Pope. If I allow any papists in my community and those papists invade to steal my land, well, my papists will side with them, so I'll lose my colony. So Catholics stay out of here. 1780, American Revolution came, that all changed, Catholics were allowed. Now let's talk a little bit about where you are. The pews you're sitting in, made out of those beautiful Georgia live oaks you see outside, virtually indestructible trees. As a matter of fact, these are original from 1898. We took them out in the year 2000, cleaned them all up, put them back in, they'll be around for centuries. Georgia live oak does not go away easy. As a matter of fact, that tree played a significant role in the history of this country. You remember your 7th or 8th grade history class. You learned about a ship called the USS Constitution. It's up in Boston Harbor. Old Ironsides, cannonballs that bounce off the side, made out of Georgia live oak. And the last 2 years, reconditioned using Cumberland Island and St. Catherine's Island oak again. So it's going to be in that harbor for another 200 years. Now, on the end of each pew, you see a brass tag. Well, in 1898, when you went to church, your family rented that whole pew for the season. We don't do that any longer. But I got to warn these people from Washington, if you come to Sunday 10 o'clock Mass, row 9 over there, seats 1 and 2, my wife and I sit in those seats. You don't go there. People look at you kind of crazy if you sit in our seats. Squatters' rights, every church in America, I don't care what the denomination is. Let's look up top here. You got a beautiful organ up there. It's got 2,309 pipes. Played every Sunday at all 4 Masses. Was made in Georgetown, Massachusetts by the Nowak Organ Company. Behind that organ, you see a window. That window is 20 feet in diameter. In the middle of the window, you see a lady in red. She is Saint Cecilia, patron saint of musicians. So we keep her up there with the organ, the cellos, the trumpet, and the choir. I'm going to tell you a couple stories about the windows. In the year 2000, we had the church rehabbed. Savannah's built on marsh and sand. We had a lot of structural things to take care of. Well, we had to have the windows rehabbed. We contacted Tyrolia Glass Company in Innsbruck, Austria. They made these windows in 1898. They are still in business today. They came over to do the rehabbing. When they got here, we asked them, what did these windows cost when they were brand new? Well, they were the worker bees. They had no idea. But we were lucky enough to find a box of letters from the old bishop talking about pricing. That window, all 20 feet of it brand new, $350. Now, you can't put a window in your kitchen for $350. Now, at the same time, our insurance company said to us, you know, you have to take those windows completely out of the wall, lay them on a table to re-let them. We think that's dangerous. So they suggested to us that we have a separate insurance policy just on the windows for well over $3 million. Somewhat priceless. Now, I don't know if you know the history of stained glass windows. Middle Ages, churches were built on every hill in Europe. The priests that were building the churches said, you know what? We need windows to let light in. There was no technology to make big pieces of glass. But they knew how to make small pieces of glass, and they knew how to stain them. So one of the priests got the bright idea. He said, you know what? It's the Middle Ages. 99% of my parishioners cannot read. They can't read a Bible. They can't read a prayer book. So how about I take those little pieces of glass, stain them colors, let light in, and build biblical scenes on those windows. So if I'm giving a sermon, I can point to that window. My parishioners can get an idea of that particular biblical passage. Now this big window, this depicts Jesus Christ's ascension into heaven. I want you to look way up top at God. Doesn't he look just like Charlton Heston? Right? Should lightning come down my fingers one of these days? I don't know. This big window over here, the Blessed Mother's Assumption, body and soul into heaven. Now, when you guys walked into the church, I can say with a pretty good degree of accuracy, when you opened that door, you looked up. Very hard not to. Very light, airy, pretty place. This church is different than most churches you will ever go into for two main reasons. The first one, the columns. Every column you see in here is made of steel. They are painted to look like marble. If they were marble, they would crush. Marble is a soft rock. That's why sculptors use it. It could never support the weight of this structure. The steel can. So when you walk in, it's light, it's airy, and it's almost fragile looking due to those spindly columns. The second thing that makes us very different than most churches in the world are our paintings. We have about 30 of them. Very few churches in the world have any. If you look on the top of the aisles, on both sides, you will see the procession of the saints. And if you look up front, you have various biblical images. None of these paintings were part of the original church. 12 years after the church was built, we contracted with an artist group in New York City to do the paintings. They did all of these paintings in New York City on canvas, shipped them down to us, and we installed them like wallpaper. So they are murals, they are not frescoes. Corner on the front wall, Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus escaping to Egypt. The big painting on the front wall, Sermon on the Mount. If you go to the center altar and you look up on both sides, you will see the four gospel writers. Matthew, Mark over my shoulder, Luke and John up there. Big painting on the front wall here, Pentecost, the Holy Spirit coming. Last one over, St. Anthony of Padua with the children. Now if you come back to this side, over here in the corner, you see those three white marble arches? That is called an ambry. It's a Latin word that means cabinet. All Catholic churches have an ambry. It's usually kept in the back. Ours is very pretty. We put it out for our parishioners, visitors to enjoy its beauty. In the ambry are stored 3 urns. And in those urns are the holy oils that we use in our various rites. baptism, confirmation, last rites, things like that. Now next to it you see something very unique to this church and Savannah, not all Catholic churches, and that is a Celtic cross. If you looked in the baptismal font when you came in, you saw a tiled replica of a Celtic knot, signifying eternity. Both are Irish icons. Both pay homage to the Irish community of Savannah, that in 1898, when our original church burned to the ground, they invested a lot of their time and, more importantly, a lot of their personal treasures to rebuild this very beautiful place for us to pray in. It's our way of saying we are not going to forget you and thank you. And if you're here on St. Patrick's Day, we thank them even a little more. And I can tell you like that. Now, across the front we have 3 altars. Let me tell you about them. This altar back in here is the Blessed Sacrament altar and perhaps the holiest part of the church. I'm going to talk about that in 1 minute. The middle altar, where our priest will say Mass, and then the light blue altar, which is the Virgin Mother Mary altar. Now the Virgin Mother Mary altar, many brides will pray to the Virgin Mother at time of their wedding to have her intercede to her son Jesus Christ to bless that wedding. My Polish and Irish grandmother in Hackensack, New Jersey, would pray every day to the Virgin Mother for one very, very good reason: to keep me out of trouble. Worked till I was 15. She ran out of gas. Now this altar, perhaps the holiest part of the church, the Blessed Sacrament altar. When you walk around, you will see in the back of this altar is a little brass door. It is called a tabernacle. In our faith, we believe when the priest consecrates the host at Mass, it does become the body of Jesus Christ. It is not a symbol. People will consume that body at Mass. When Mass is complete, the priest has hosts left over. They're put into a chalice or ciborium and stored back there in that tabernacle to be used at the next Mass. You will always know in every Catholic church in the world where the tabernacle is and that Jesus Christ is present in that tabernacle. Every Catholic church in the world will have a red candle lit saying the tabernacle is here and Christ is present. The only time during the year that that candle will go out is Thursday, Friday, and Saturday of Holy Week. Tabernacle door will be open. Christ is not present. Our church is essentially dead for 3 days. Easter morning, Christ is risen, back in the tabernacle, and a candle is relit. Now, Christ was Jewish. Most early Christians were Jewish. And I'm sure in their conversion, much as you or I converting to anything, would want to bring something familiar with you. Well, when Moses was wandering around the desert for 40 years, he carried with him very sacred, holy religious documents, a Torah, 10 Commandments. At night he would stop and he would set up a tent, and he'd put these sacred documents in a tent. Jewish word for tent? Tabernacle. What would he put in front of the tent and also inside the tent, so as people knew it was a sacred, holy place to come pray? Inside the tent where the priests were, a menorah. In front of the tent where he wanted worshipers to come and pray, he would build a bonfire. We have a candle. Judeo-Christian rites feed in many, many ways. That's just one. Now the middle altar, the middle window up there, St. John the Baptist is baptizing Jesus. Below those windows you see a beautiful structure. It used to be the altar. It is called a reredos, Latin word that means backdrop. Back in the 1960s, Pope John convened Vatican Council II and did some wonderful things for our church. He said, let's open the windows up in here and let fresh air rush through here. Let's put the Mass in the vernacular of the local people, not Latin. And let's have the priest preach to the people in the pews rather than to the altar. Well, when he did that, we had to put this small altar in front for the priest to work from. So that beautiful altar in the back became nothing more than a backdrop. Now on this altar, written in gold and in Latin, essentially says, welcome to the table of the Lamb. Two more things for you. My favorite part of the church, and if you get a chance to look at anything in detail, look at these. The Stations of the Cross. They start on the wall over here, 7 down and 7 coming back on the other side. They depict in a logical progression Christ's passion, from the day he was condemned till the day he came off the cross. All Catholic churches have stations. What is unique about these? These were hand carved in 1898 out of linden wood in the town of Oberammergau, Bavaria, Germany. They were carved by many carvers. However, Jesus' visage, his face, was carved by the same carver on every station. So his face is the same on every station. Now, last thing I talk about, and I talk about it because of the wonderful symbolism that is upon it. And that's the confessional booth over here. On this side, you'll see a piece of glass that is etched with a dried, seared desert cactus scene. You go to the front, you're going to see an etching of the prodigal son, the bad boy returning home to the father. You go to the far right side, you're going to see an etching of the flourishing new forest, the new growth, coming of confessing one's sins and growing again. So I think the symbolism is quite wonderful. I can tell you, since I was this big, in Hackensack, New Jersey, Holy Trinity Schoolyard, Friday afternoon, I'd be with my buddies playing. At 3:30 on the button, the nuns would show up, and they would click their clickers, and we would run and get in line and go to confession. By the time I got to be 15, and Grandma's prayers weren't working all that well, and I was getting in a little bit of trouble, I did not like it. As a 77-year-old man, there is not a better nor cheaper shrink in all of Savannah than the man I can talk to in there. You guys have any questions for me? I have a request of you, if you can. Costs a lot of money to maintain an old building. Lights have to be on, roof can't leak. We have a collection box by the back door. If you can leave the cost of a cup of coffee, and it doesn't have to be a $12 Starbucks latte, it can be a cheap old Jersey diner coffee. Anything to maintain an old building where stuff is always breaking, we'd be very grateful. Thanks for listening to me. Be careful stepping out. You got a little step out of the pew. Thank you.